Hello everyone, I'm day weather meteorologist Don Day with your Public Lands Council weekly weather update for this June 8th, 2024, brought to you by WSR Insurance Services Incorporated and Ag Risk Advisors. Second full week of June is coming up upon us here, and it looks certainly like it should for this time of year. Still some back and forth, still some ups and downs, but certainly a lot of you, especially west of the Divide, have already had some summer heat. The heat is going to be contained in the western half of the nation, especially west of the Continental Divide. If you're west of the Divide to the Pacific Northwest, to California, to Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, you're going to bake. You're going to have some very hot weather, just kind of like you've had here recently. You get into the other side of the Rockies, the other side of the Divide, the Midwest, the Great Lakes, the Corn Belt, parts of the plains are actually going to see below average temperatures, as the weather pattern has flipped a little bit. Now, this change in the weather could bring some needed rain in some areas. There are some areas along and east of the Rockies, from parts of eastern Wyoming, eastern Colorado, down into eastern areas of New Mexico, into the western high plains, that have missed out on a lot of spring moisture, but could see some good rain-producing thunderstorms. West of the Divide, there's going to be spotty shower and thunderstorm activity, but we'll show you the areas that probably have the best rainfall chances. In the last week, we continue to see the nation's midsection from the northern plains to far eastern Colorado into this area here as being the most wet. It's not been as wet in Montana and parts of the northern Rockies. Precipitation, as you can see right here, pretty spotty or very, very light over the last 7 days, while this part of the nation just continues to get wet and more wet and more wet. The southwestern United States, not seeing the monsoon thunderstorm pattern coming up out of Mexico yet, but that is likely going to change in the next week or two. This is the precipitation anomaly over the past week, and so you can see, especially right here, where the drier than average conditions have really started to show up here over the last several weeks, with the lighter amounts there in the northern plains. Temperature-wise, things have started to warm up. The first 6 days of June, pretty warm across the west. You can see this area green, a very cool spring in many areas of Canada, and this coolness is going to get released next week. And this is what we are talking about. While it's going to be warm in the west, it's going to be much cooler in the east, and the dividing line is going to be the Continental Divide. The latest drought monitor continues to show this persistent dryness in central and western Kansas, New Mexico. It's extending into Arizona and southwest Texas. This is an area right here, especially south of the North Platte River, that's been getting dry and not really getting precipitation. But soil moisture still isn't bad, and you can see a lot of the Midwest and Corn Belt, no drought whatsoever. When we take a look at where we are with La Nina, it continues to grow and expand. You can see the blue and the green here growing across the Pacific. So the La Nina continues to form. Where we were a year ago is the opposite. This is where we were a year ago in early June of 2023. We were in El Nino with those warm water temperatures along the equator. So it's basically 180, different along the equator. And that's where the key is in terms of how precipitation and temperatures go. And that La Nina will continue to expand and get stronger as we go through the summer months. When we take a look at the next 7 days, this is where we're somewhat hopeful. Increased thunderstorm activity could bring parts of Wyoming, Colorado into the panhandles, western Kansas, western Nebraska. This area needs rain, and there's a chance that there's going to be some. It's not going to be as wet in the Pacific Northwest and the northern Rockies, kind of reverse of where it's been, while we continue to see Texas, Oklahoma, parts of Kansas, Missouri, parts of the Corn Belt wet. Florida is getting back into the rain finally. Could see some tropical storm activity, or at least a depression, maybe 7 to 10 days from now in the Gulf of Mexico, something to keep an eye on. Mexico's rains starting to show up now, but still very little in Arizona and western New Mexico. This area we're hoping gets into some thunderstorm activity during the second half of June. I think that's going to happen. Temperature-wise, we talked about it being warm in the west and cool in the east. Look at that contrast. You get just on the other side of the Rockies, it's going to be downright cool for the month of June. In the Corn Belt, the Northern Plains, Southern Canada, through the Great Lakes in the Northeast, while the warmest temperatures relative to the 30-year average will be out west. Have yourself a good week ahead. Our next update will be next Saturday, June 15th.